Hi, I'm Stephanie Skinner, and welcome to Counterculture. Today, we are here to learn about one of the first and certainly one of the most loved cheesemakers in the country, Cypress Grove. It's more than likely that you have Humboldt fog in your cheese case, and we are going to discuss that enormously popular cheese today, but we're also going to talk about some others, including a brand new one. Before we get started, I want to make a few housekeeping notes. This presentation should be in speaker view mode automatically, but if not, please put it in speaker view. There is a Q&A button on either the top or side of your screen. Please post questions and comments there. I will be reviewing them as we go along, and I will ask them to the presenters as appropriate. We will have a Q&A period at the end of the presentation too, but if we don't get to your questions today, I'll ask the presenters to respond to you directly afterward. You can also use the chat function to throw your ideas out there, which I will also monitor and try to throw in as necessary. And we love your insight and participation. Ask questions, tell us your favorite pairings, a favorite recipe, customer quotes you cherish, whatever moves you. Also, you will receive an email following this presentation. Please take a moment to tell us what you think. We use this information to refine everything that we do. So thank you in advance. So to tell us more about Cypress Grove, our first presenter, here is the one and only Michele Haram, Sales Director and ACS Board Member. Michele, take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, lovely to be here today. I am Michele Haram. It is wonderful. You guys have probably heard of Cypress Grove before. But it is, especially at this time in the world, it's nice to get together with old friends, yes? And one of my old friends also with us today is Nate McElroy, and we're here to chat about Cypress Grove cheese. It's great to see some familiar names in the attendance out there, and always a pleasure to see new ones. And a big thanks to the crew at Counterculture for for having us today. You always do such a good job of keeping the cheese community together, and it's really nice to have a hub to work from. So with that said, I'm sorry, Nate McElroy, who is our our East Coast Sales Director.
Did I just get a promotion?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks for having us, Counterculture. Like Michele said, it's great to see some names out there that are familiar. We're going to talk about Cypress Grove today, taste some cheese, and answer any questions you might have. So all that said, what better way to introduce Cypress Grove than to have a little video from our founder, Mary Keene.
I was doing back to the land and ended up in southern Humboldt, built a log cabin, but next door was a cow dairy where they kept goats. And I asked the woman if I could buy a goat, and she laughed and said, honey, if you can catch one, you could have it. And pretty soon I had 50 goats. I had to do something with that milk. So I was making cheese at home, totally at home. I was milking my 50 goats by hand, and I had a little fridge where people would leave their glass jar and they'd leave their money, and I put milk in their jars. And, you know, it was very fancy. Cypress Grove was officially founded in 1983. That was when we first made the cheese at the legally stamped creamery. When you think about it, it's the challenges in life that make things worthwhile in a way. That adds a balance. It's like the cheese flavors in your mouth. You need it all to be successful.
So one of the questions that we, so first of all, let me just say, we just pulled we don't have a very fancy presentation. We pulled some pictures out of the archive because we thought that they would be kind of fun to see. You can see Mary and her pigtails, and it was so long ago that shirt is back in style. There is a picture of her cabin that they pulled the logs out of the forest to build. That's one of her daughters on the porch. It's, you know, she's always, one of the questions that we get most often is where's Mary? Is she still involved in the day-to-day? And Mary's still there, but she doesn't really work with us on the day-to-day. She still mentors us and still involved with the culture of the company, but she doesn't really like pay attention to like what's shipping on Tuesday or what have you. But she is always, you know, she tasted our new cheese that you guys are going to get to taste too and really liked it. So with the Mary stamp of approval, we get to go forward with that. So as she mentioned, as you probably already know, we were started in 1983. That is, so she was doing the mason jars on the porch thing. And there was a restaurant in town that is still there called Larapin. And they really liked her cheese, but they told her that they couldn't buy her cheese unless she got, you know, like a license. She couldn't make it in her kitchen anymore. So that's when she started the very first actually licensed dairy, so that she could make the cheese, and we still sell it to Larapin. They still have it on their menu, which is really lovely. You can imagine at the time that so this is in the Wayback Machine, 1983, there was nothing for goats, right? Americans were not eating goat cheese. There was no, all the research about dairying was done for cows. So there was no equipment that worked for goats. There was no information about breeding or feeding or anything of that nature. And Mary, who won the national goat competition with her genetics, and then the other pioneers that you guys are familiar with, Allison Hooper, Laura Chanel, Jennifer Bice, Judy Shadd, they all had to work in cooperation and share their knowledge in order to make goat cheese a thing in the United States, right? You can imagine there was a tiny market for it. Most people thought that if you were fancy, you were eating imported cheese. But at the time, like hotels had the fanciest restaurants and they had the big fancy French chefs. And those big fancy French chefs wanted to have the cheese from their country, or the cheese as they remembered it from their cooking when they grew up. But imported cheese was nothing like that, because it's supposed to be fresh goat cheese, not 6-week-old seafaring goat cheese, right? So there was a little toehold to suddenly make this thing work if everybody worked together. And coincidentally, 1983 was also the founding of the American Cheese Society. So, you know, in the early days, the cheese was built on European styles, right? In the early days of all American artisanal cheese making, it was all built on European styles. When Mary came up with Humboldt Fog, that was completely unique, something that had never been made before. She had the goats, had too many goats, and she needed to focus on making cheese. So she decided to get rid of the goats. And so she sold them to some neighboring farms. And also, coincidentally, some of her stock went to Judy Shadd at Capriole. But the idea was that she wanted to be able to concentrate at that time on cheese making more so than on raising goats. Nate, do you want to talk about goat's milk? Oh, no.
Well, yeah, we can take a quick note on goat's milk before we see the beautiful coastline there. But yeah, goat's milk is extremely expensive and not as abundant as cow's milk. And so when Mary sold the herd off to the local farm, she made the agreement to buy the milk back. So the farmers were being ensured that they were getting proper value for the milk, and the quality was going to be great too. So, paying for the best quality milk is the building blocks of making great cheese, and we'll see that a little bit with our dairy in a few slides. So while Mary sold off the herd, she could focus solely on the cheese making and moving the company forward, realizing that that's where her energy was best spent. And so we can now transport ourselves to scenic Northern California and Humboldt County.
Just a note to add to that, Nate. I'm personally very proud of the fact that during this pandemic, when all cheese sales just kind of went plop of fancy cheese, we did not lower our price nor our commitments to our local goat dairies. We continued to give them their premium price and bought as much milk as we had committed to, even though we were selling a lot less cheese.
That's a great fact. So Humboldt County, when you hear of Humboldt County, not a lot of people know where that is. So I figured it'd be good for you guys to maybe get a feel for where we're making cheese and where we're raising our animals. So Humboldt is about a 5-hour car ride north of San Francisco. It's where the Redwoods meet the sea. Trinity National Forest rolls right down to the Pacific Ocean. So you get this beautiful climate. It never gets too hot, never gets too cold, great for animal husbandry. There are still a lot of farms, but a few independents. So dairying is still an aspect of agricultural life there. And what our location does that really impacts our products or presents a challenge for getting our products to market is the logistics are somewhat complicated. You can't get full length refrigerated trucks up the highway there. So our cheese is traveling down Highway 101 from the creamery to a cross dock, either in the Bay Area, or often we'll go north to Oregon or Redding. And so it incurs charges along the way and handling. So, you know, you're dealing with a very fragile product to begin with, and then you're adding all of these complications to it. So we do our best to monitor the product as closely as we can. And, you know, it's opportunities to work really closely with our vendors and retailers to, you know, kind of explain why the cheese might look a certain way, or why is it expensive? You know, freight is very expensive. And so it's a fun puzzle to solve when it goes right, and a challenging puzzle to solve when it doesn't. That said, we can eat some cheese now, because I'm sure you all have your cheese out and nobody wants to hear us talk on and on with food in front of you. So we're going to taste our flagship cheese, Humboldt Fog. Michele, do you want to tell the dream story, or would you rather me keep riffing on this?
Oh, I love the dream story. I'll tell the dream.
Okay, cool.
Again, this is one of the sort of the famous stories about Mary, is that she didn't really know how to make cheese. She just sort of picked it up, right? And so once she had been making cheese for some years, she and, in fact, Judy Shad took a trip to France to visit some cheesemakers and see how they were making cheese. And on her way home, what you saw those pictures earlier, a couple slides ago, that was the fog coming into Humboldt. That's a real thing. It happens almost every day. The marine layer comes in, and there is this dusting of fog. And so she was dozing off, coming in with all the pillowy clouds and the dusting of fog. And she thought, well, this should be a cheese and I should be making this cheese. So it really literally came to her in a dream that she should make Humboldt Fog, and it should be puffy, white, soft, bloomy rind, and it should have an ash line in the center that sort of represents the fog rolling in on the bay. I love that story. So this cheese, if you have not tasted it before, is a very nice citrusy, soft, white, bloomy rinded cheese. Nobody was making this in the United States, I promise you that. And it is, I find it to be kind of citrusy and and really light, crumbly, not too salty, but it is definitely a step beyond fresh chev, right? The ash on the rind, it's poplar derived, it's poplar. It's not derived from poplar, it's just poplar, vegetal ash. And we use a combination of geo and penicillium on the rind. And the ash is there to help change the pH to make the bloomy stuff grow, right? And then also to help the cheese not collect so much moisture so that it can actually ship and have some sort of shelf life. Mary had a special make process that she came up with on her own. So when you slice into that cheese, the layers still stick together. Sometimes if you see a 2-layered cheese, they kind of go cattywampus, but these layers stick together, and when you cut into it, the ash feathers really beautifully. One of my favorite stories, again, about this cheese is that Bob McCall used to go around to stores with $100 bill in his wallet, And you know, the box that it comes in has those little feet on it, and it even says on it, hey, flip me over once a week. He brought that $100 bill with him around the country in hopes of handing it to some cheesemonger somewhere that had actually flipped the box. So it's just a note to you guys. If you have this cheese, it will be better served if you flip it once a week in your cooler, if you keep it for more than a week.
So here we see 3 different stages of Humboldt fog in its early days. We do kind of a three-stage process before the cheese is wrapped and sent to market. See on the top left there is a freshly ashed, going into a humid environment, start cultivating the molds, and then we're going into another environment to really get the bloom going on it. And then the third stage is a colder room that sort of slows down the growth of the mold, because when it's in transit, it's going to continue to grow. The cheese is going to continue to grow through its whole life and change, right? But we need to prepare it for the cold chain, so it's not shocked when it goes into, you know, a very cold refrigerated truck. And so that slows down the mold, and then we're able to wrap it and get it out. And then as it goes through these various environments on its trip to the counter, it's going to be in good shape, and we've like created a good environment for those molds to continue to grow and the cheese to develop.
I think it's also a good time to mention that you know, seasonality makes a difference in everybody's cheese, right? And for us in particular, it does as well. And we change our recipe to meet the milk as it is that day, rather than changing the milk, monkeying with the milk in order to make it match our recipe. So I think that we don't standardize our milk. We use the milk that we get, and we make adjustments to how, you know, how long it stays in the aging room, or how long it stays in that cold corner of the aging room, in order to make sure that the cheese you get is consistent, but not McDonald's. And here are the 3, I'm sorry, I gotta say
No, go for it.
Here are 3 pictures of what Humboldt fog can look like. Humboldt fog directly in California, basically, right when it comes off the shelf, it looks like this upper left corner. And then as it ripens, and then as it's mature, and I always say this is like California, Chicago, and New York. That's what it looks like when you get it there, basically. And that modeling on the outside is completely normal. And part of the beauty of the cheese, I really like my Humboldt fog to go running out the door without me. So I really like it when it's ooey gooey like that, and that you get a little bit of bite from the rind.
Yeah, I agree. I want it to be kind of funky, and I want that proteolytic activity to be, you know, aggressive. So, but you know, I think it's important for a lot of the attendees here, and just the cheese world at large, I'm sure we're all aware of it. Like, it all depends on your personal preference and the customer's preference, you know? So while what we might like might not be palatable to some people, and that's just the way of the world, but you know, we try to get the cheese out to you guys in an optimal condition. And so I think that depending on how fast you're moving through cheese, and how long you want to hold on to it, which we don't recommend holding on to it necessarily, but you can get various levels of flavor and textures out of Humboldt fog. So.
Right. So, oh, here's a couple of pictures of things that we've paired with it. That first one is what's that called? A Traverse City cherry.
Yeah, Travis. I think it's got. This is from our colleague up there on the Michigan Peninsula. Traverse City cocktail cherries. Zingerman's candied pecan. So it's like a little like cherry pie kind of thing going on.
Okay.
One thing we've seen a lot of success with, which blew our minds the first time we did it, was a Humboldt fog brulee. Down there in the bottom right hand corner, you can see we took a Humboldt fog mini and cut it horizontally, and then put sugar in the raw on it and torched it, and it really changes the as you would imagine, the flavor of the cheese, but it turns it into like a berry dessert like product, especially with some fresh berries on it.
Wow. So I have a little bite to share you guys as well, live. I won't eat it because I'm not a Food Network star, and therefore I am not practiced at chewing on screen, and I'm not going to get there. But here is a little bite of Humboldt Fog on with lemon curd, Meyer lemon curd, on one of those rustic bakery chocolate cacao nib cookies. And if you have, well, this is just like, you need a cigarette after. It's good.
Yeah, and as far as beverage pairings for Humboldt Fog, my rule of thumb is to try as much as you want to try to find the right thing. But I really like saisons, especially like European ones, or ones that just aren't as sweet as some of the American saisons, or dry bubbly white. But that's just years of me trying to figure out exactly what goes well with it. There's a lot of tough work there.
This is Stephanie. I just want to point out one pairing that somebody suggested, which I would not have thought of. It is a Humboldt Fog with a little dab of ramp pesto, which is kind of cool.
I would eat that.
Yeah, I'd eat that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Julie.
Another beverage pairing that I just came across was Humboldt Fog with a tiki drink, like a rum flavored fruit bomb. Seems like it shouldn't go, but it totally does. I'm just gearing up for summer. I'm ready.
All right. Should we talk about sorry, Stephanie.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure if you want to continue talking, if you were going to keep talking about Humboldt Fog. I do have a Humboldt Fog question that I wanted to throw at you guys.
Sure.
That's cool. Yeah. Do you make Humboldt? This is from John Braga. Do you make Humboldt Fog all year round?
We sure do. Yeah. We sure do.
Okay.
And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something that, like, if we couldn't produce Humboldt Fog for you guys in Q4, would you want to carry Humboldt Fog? I mean, it's a thing that we have to, it's just to make goat cheese go, you have to have it be available for your distributors and your customers year round, right?
Yeah. And here's another Humboldt Fog question, which is a production question, possibly for Nick. Nate, Nick, whatever. Anyway, how is the ashen? How do you get the ashen side?
So Humboldt Fog is actually 2 pieces of cheese put together and ripened. So what we do is we have an extruder that pushes out 1/2 of the cheese, and then we add the ash, and then we take another half and put it on top, and then the exterior is ash completely, and the ripening allows for everything to kind of meld together.
Cool. Okay, I'll stop interrupting.
Oh, good. Feel free to interrupt with any questions that come in.
Okay.
So a little bit about our dairy. Here's a slide with all kinds of baby goats and adult goats. And there's our herd manager, Chris, with our goat food, TMR, total mixed ration. So our dairy, we wanted to create a demonstration goat dairy, kind of an open source dairy that would push the goat milk industry forward. So in a full circle move, Mary decided that she would open an open book, best practices dairy, and provide that information to local farms and aspiring farmers. And so in 2011, we opened this model dairy. There are 3 barns and a kid barn, and we're milking about 1,200 goats right now. So that's a lot of goats. I think our capacity is somewhere around 1,400, but don't quote me on that. The goat milk from our goats is really high in butter fat, and it actually our goats produce more than the average California herd. And additionally, we're the first Humane Certified goat dairy in the country, and we've received a perfect score the last 3 audits. So pretty proud of this operation. And so here you can see the open air barns and pasture that the goats have access to. So the farm was built with and spec'd with humane standards in mind. All pens have outdoor exercise, dry lot runs, and the pasture is offered seasonally and rotationally. So not everybody at once, but on a rotated schedule. You can see these large hoop barns in that center photo. The roof is made from recycled plastic and flax fibers. The open air gives like great ventilation for them, and the roof allows for a lot of natural light to come through and vitamin D. So you can even see grass growing inside the barns from time to time. So the overall goal was more milk from fewer goats, and we're getting there. We don't use any growth promoters, RBST, blanket treatment antibiotics, or medicated feeds, or any of that stuff. But we do, like, in the event the animals have acute infections, we do treat them because that's our responsibility. We can go to the next slide.
Nate, what kind of goats, and what is the butterfat content? Yeah.
I don't know the butterfat content offhand, but we have Alpines, Sonnens, Toggenburgs, and I believe La Manchas. And so you'll see, because we're doing a lot of optimization in our breeding, you will see goats with different traits. Like you could see like a shaggy Toggenburg looking goat with no ears, and all that. So.
So the first, the first goats that came onto this farm were actually after when Mary decided to start the farm, the dairy. She restarted. She went back to Judy Shad, who had her, who had gotten some of her goats when they shut it down. So some of these goats are the descendants of Hazel and Esmeralda, who were the first 2 goats that Mary got from that farm next door. So that's pretty cool. Just like a whole full circle event, right? And it's also, did you mention the part about the humane certification, Nate?
I did. Yeah. We are third-party audits. Yep, 100% of the points. Yay. I didn't mention that. But.
100% of the points. Yep. And somebody I just saw popped up on chat. We are milking 1,200 goats at this farm, and we still get milk from surrounding farms as well. So are we ready to, no? Are we going to talk about goats some more, or are we going to taste the second cheese?
We're going to just do a little bit more on the goats. And we got a little video of the dairy there. So yeah, our goal was to promote change within the industry and showing that it's possible to milk goats humanely and safely while simultaneously making money. If the farm isn't making money, it's, there's no reason to have it operating. You hear the term cow comfort a lot in the dairy industry, but we really believe in goat comfort. Without happy animals, you're not going to get good milk, and without good milk, you're not going to have good cheese. So.
How long is the Humboldt Fog aged when you ship it out?
It depends.
Yeah, got it.
It depends on the day, really, and seasonality, of course. But it's about somewhere between 15 and 30 days, usually, I think. So that picture on the left is one of the pastures, and these are young goatlings. They're about a year. They spend their first year before they have kids. They spend their first year out on the pastures in rotational pens. So there's not 1,200 in one place, as you can see, but there's a cohort of groups of goats that stick together through their whole lives, because the goats really like consistency, very much so. So if you throw somebody else into the mix, then the whole hierarchy gets all messed up. So in order to keep the goats calm, they stay with their cohort throughout their lives. They have babies together. It's like a coffee clutch. It's awesome.
And what are the goats? So this is from Micah. What are the goats' main forage or favorite special foraging vegetations? This sounds like a nerd question for you, Nate.
Oh, I would say just about the bark off of any of the trees on the property out there, and anything they can kind of get their hands on. We do use a TMR, a total mixed ration for them, that is made up of alfalfa and corn and whatnot. That gives them like working with a nutritionist to find that balance of everything they need to produce good milk and grow appropriately. So, but you know, goats are browsers. They're going to try to nibble on just about everything they can nibble on until they find something that they like.
They are quite fond of my hair. I'm just saying.
I don't have that problem.
Without goat spit sauce in my hair. But it's also true that we have that they are watching the nutritional intake for all the goats, so that they can, if there was a lot of eating one day, maybe they get a little less food the next day, or if nobody's eating enough, then they get a little bit more. They love the stuff that they put in that in the alfalfa, but they really love that TMR, and so they just eat it up. Yes. Yeah, he does. Eats my cheek, eats my hair.
Well, should we move on to the newest cheese and keep on snacking here?
Let's do that. Let's do that. So the newest cheese is Little Giant, which you guys should have in front of, well, I hope it came in your box looking like this. Isn't this the most gorgeous box you've ever seen? I just think this is the cutest. So good. So good. And the idea behind Little Giant was that we wanted to do something that was different. I mean, you guys have tasted Humboldt Fog, right? And Truffle Tremor and probably Bermuda Triangle. And all of our cheeses have a very citrusy and bright note to them. We wanted to do something with Little Giant that was a little off the beaten path for us. So this is, we think that this is a much more yeasty, and it's mild, but it's a much more yeasty, fudgy kind of texture and a different flavor. And since you can taste it right next to your Humboldt Fog, you can tell us if we hit the mark or not.
Yeah, and it's hard for us at Cypress to do anything outside of our wheelhouse. So that would be fresh and soft ripened. We have our creamery is dedicated to those two styles, and bringing any outside production methods, aging methods into that could really jeopardize the whole operation. So, if you think of like washed rinds or natural rinds or anything that could really create some cross-contamination issues, we have to shy away from. And so with those limitations comes some, creative processes. And I know that this cheese been like, some concept of this cheese has been in the works for probably close to 10 years. And knowing what we can work with and what we can do, finally finding that mark with this product to bring out like a really buttery, rich cheese, I think is just really goes to show how hard our creamery works, and the dedication that they have to trying to find something that we can still do and push forward some innovation, given our constraints.
This is and this is so new, you guys. I know of one retailer in California that has it currently, and if you are a member of the Tamales Bay of the Cowgirl Creamery Cheese Club, you might have gotten one of these, but it really has not made it outside of California into stores yet. And really, I think only one store in California that's just carrying it. And it is, so, really brand new. So we're really looking for your feedback on this and what you do with it. For me, it's so new that I haven't really been able to think of anything super outrageous to do with it yet, but I did think, okay, here's some crostinis. I've got Little Giant on a crostini with some fresh apple and honeycomb with some strawberry jam and just fresh strawberries. And then this one is some goat caramel from Fat Toad with a little bit of crushed Marcona almonds and some chocolate shavings. Because
Nice.
why not?
Yeah, I've heard of people with more skill in pastry than me that have done it en croûte and had some really cool results with it. So instead of like doing brie en croûte, it could possibly be a replacement for that. But I tend to just eat it and have it with a nice Pilsner or something to wash it down.
What is the shelf life on the Little Giant?
It's 55 days from make, and so it's short, and so that creates some issues with getting it across the country and getting into like a wider distribution. So it's something we're working on as far as trying to get a longer shelf life on it, but we don't want to compromise the quality in the process. So it's a challenge for us.
Indeed. I think one of the things that I think is a really good pairing for it is 75% chocolate and Texas Keeper hard cider reduction, Erica Bongart for the win. One of the things I'm doing with it is a nice dry martini with a nice briny olive in it. So good. It's really, it's so mild and delicious, but completely different from Humboldt Fog. And I think it really makes it so that it is a nice palette for 100 different things. You can go in any direction with this cheese. And it's also it's not at all gamey. So it's not going to chase people off if they're not like big goat cheese lovers. This is not going to be the cheese that makes them never, ever put goat cheese in their mouth again.
Should we talk about sustainability?
Yes.
At the creamery? Cool. So our creamery is on an 18-acre parcel of land, and it's one of the last open tracts within the Arcata city limits. So we've done a lot to try to maintain the environmental standards around there and improve our footprint. So we have a state-of-the-art anaerobic wastewater pretreatment system, mitigates a lot of the impact on our local municipal treatment plant. Funny enough, where we have the creamery was once home to a cow dairy and creamery named Cypress Grove Dairy. And I believe when the property was first acquired, it was very neglected, and there was a lot of disrepair on the land. So major investments were made to the expansion of the creamery and full beautification of the 18 acres. There were two 100-year-old dilapidated barns that needed to be dealt with. And so we made changes to protect bird species, wildlife, reduce energy and water use, create an edible walkway with fruits and nuts trees running along the edge of the property that allow employees can go out and just pick fruit and nuts off the trees and have a little snack. And there's nesting boxes for tree swallows near marshy areas of the creamery and the dairy sites.
Yeah,
quick back question on Little Giant on the make process. Any fat or any cream or whatever added back in? That's a question mark. And is it the same ratio of geotrichum and penicillium for the rind? Nerd attack.
Yeah. So I tried to get the exact balance of geo and PC, but apparently it is protected by the lab we get the culture from. So I couldn't find that one out. But we do we use it's called a non-aggressive rind because it's such a fragile cheese, so small. It's not super active. So I would guess that I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I figured that maybe there's a heavier geopresence to maybe slow down some of that candidum, but that's just pure conjecture on my part.
But you look like a scientist, and that's what counts.
Well, that's half the battle right there. So
hey, one other quick, this is so important with counterculture, is we want to give mongers an opportunity to be able to describe cheeses to their customers. And a question here that is, can you describe the flavor difference again between Little Giant and Humboldt Fog, just to give them some language, because it is so new.
So for me, I think that Humboldt Fog is a much more citrusy, bright flavor. And when you do Little Giant, it's a little bit more yeasty and a little bit more earthy, but it's not a strong cheese by any means. Nate, how do you describe it?
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say there's more acidity to Humboldt Fog and like kind of a classic goat cheese sense. And then with Little Giant, I just feel that the butterfat coaxed out of the milk is the most forward thing for me. So I think it's really, really rich, and like just kind of like fatty, and the yeastiness is there, mushrooms there. But for me, like the thing that just hits my palate at first is just that really good butterfat.
Yeah, and that's partly because of the make process, right? Because we use a finished product, our fromage blanc, our goat fromage blanc, alongside milk. So I know some people use, like when you add cream for a double cream or something like that, we're using our fromage blanc as a kind of a starter for this cheese. And it's again, it was years in the making to try to figure out how to make a goat cheese that wasn't a brie, but wasn't Humboldt Fog.
Another quick question. Would you consider pre-orders with a supplier, or when can we order direct for Little Giant?
Yeah.
Pre-orders are encouraged. We'd be happy to work with you and your distributor or supplier anywhere along the lines to make sure we can get the product to you.
So Meredith, that's an opportunity to reach out, depending on where you are, reach out to either Nate or Meredith. I'm just like mixing everybody's name up here today. Sorry.
My equal time, Meredith, can reach out.
Michele.
Or Nate or Nick.
You have so many questions here. I'm trying to read them, and so I've got everybody's name monkeying around in my head. Anyway, moving on. Sorry.
Awesome. Okay. So the next cheese we wanted to taste, are we ready to taste the next cheese, Nate?
Let's do it.
Okay. Is Purple Haze. And this is our fresh goat cheese, which is the building block for all of our cheeses. And we also make it in a disc rather than in a log, just for a little bit of differentiation in your case. Excuse me. And we mix in all the flavors, and all are mixed in by hand. Lavender is a huge crop in Humboldt County, and fennel pollen as well. So I know somebody asked earlier if we're doing a CBD cheese, also a big crop in Humboldt County, but at this point, not yet, but we won't say no. We will never say no. In any event, this is our most popular flavored cheese, really kind of outside the box. And I also saw somebody asking, what's with the name Little Giant? Well, it kind of plays all of our names come from within the creamery. We ask people for their ideas, and sometimes we have contests, or somebody just throws something out there meant to be, kind of a riff on the hippie culture or on the 80s or something like that, in order to, to make them fun. Does it make it so that people can understand what's in the package? Not necessarily, but that's what you guys are for. Yeah, so Purple Haze, our most popular flavored cheese, and it's got fennel and lavender and fennel pollen. And I love this cheese. I just love this cheese. If you don't like flavored cheeses, this is still a cheese that you can eat really easily. I use it for everything. Today, I made a flatbread with arugula and a nice strand of my hair. It's got arugula and prosciutto, and just put a little bit of fig jam on the flatbread, and then drizzled some balsamic over it. So I can't wait for this class to be over so I can put this in my pie hole, but it's really a very versatile cheese. Most people are introduced to goat cheese by having it sprinkled on their salad, right? So our cheeses work great for that, but they're just a little bit elevated in as far as flavor and texture go. Nate, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I had it the other night on a beeten arugula salad. So I think it's just replacing anything that calls for fresh chev with purple haze from time to time is a fun twist. One of the best pairings we've found with purple haze is hot honey, and we do some stuff with Mike's hot honey, and it's just the spicy sweetness with the fennel, which gives the cheese a little bit of a meaty backbone. And then the delicateness of the lavender is a really great combination. And then our colleague Megan did purple haze on top of fried green tomatoes, which was looked really good. I think we have a picture of that in a couple of slides actually. So there's all kinds of uses for the cheese. You know, eating it alone is just fine as well, or with figs. But Pilsner, dry Rieslings are great to drink with it.
Oh, this is a picture of our squeezer. I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
technical name for that. The press.
Yeah, it's a curd press. Yeah, yeah. So we can get all of our, you know, we have a vat agitator to get the curd, and then we put the curd into the press, and that beautiful piece of machinery squeezes that curd slowly to reach the right moisture level, and then we get all of the curd out of the bags and wash the bags and do it all over again.
Indeed, it's about it, and it's lactic, right? So predominantly lactic. So it takes 24 hours for that to occur. When you're thinking about it, enzymatic cheeses, right? That's like how quickly can you make it happen within a couple of hours? And the lactic cheeses all of our cheeses take take 24 hours to get to cheese perfection. Mm-hmm. So, and what else was I going to say about, somebody asked about Little Giant, the name specifically Little Giant. And this is because of the tall redwoods, right? And this is sort of, if you see on the side of the box, it's the size and shape of the state park signs. So it's kind of a very subtle call out to the redwoods in Humboldt. What do you guys do? What do you guys? Oh, okay. Go, Nate. Truffle tremor.
Truffle tremor. All right. So I think one thing that's good to note on our flavored cheeses is what we try to do is really find a balance between the expression of the goat's milk and then the unique ingredients we're using. So, you know, in the instance of purple haze, you're getting that fennel and that little bit of like floral lavender, but you're still getting like that nice goat milk acidity, you know, the butter fat from it. It's, you know, really like finding that harmony, you know, instead of just having kind of like a flavor bomb or something, you know, on your plate. We're just trying to find like harmony there. And so I think one of the best cheeses we make that represents that concept is truffle tremor. You know, this was again a cheese that took a lot of failures to get right. This was before my time with the company, but talking to some of my colleagues there, it was originally thought, the original concept of this was that it was going to be a fresh cheese with truffle in it. And they couldn't quite figure out how to get that right. So there was, she asked one of our guys in the creamery to fold some in with the next make. And he did that for, it was like I think probably the shape of Humboldt fog, I'm not sure, but did that and then forgot about it. And then when they rediscovered it and tasted it, they realized that going from the style of fresh cheese into something that would be soft ripened and maybe have a little bit of age in it was the mark they needed to head towards. So, you know, after a lot of trial and error, we finally hit the nail on the head with truffle tremor. And I will be the first one to say I do not like truffles, but it's not just because I work for the company. I do find that this is the most balanced truffle cheese I've tasted. It's versatile in the kitchen. It has that wonderful balance of the mushroom with the butter fat and the tang. of the goat's milk. And I think a lot of that's, due to the fact that there's no synthetics in there. It's just black summer truffles and our curd. So that goes a long way into creating a nice, simple yet complex flavor profile.
Yeah, it doesn't taste like it. It doesn't knock you over with the truffle. Well, it kind of does, but it doesn't knock you over with like like a truffle oil thing. Remember truffle oil? That was nasty. So let's see. Megan, I think also again is responsible for this lovely image on the left, which was both of these, the fried green tomato and then the enoki mushrooms. I made a grilled cheese today that has Gruyere and truffle tremor in it. Oops, here, see, along with caramelized onions. So it's kind of a little bit of a lazy man's croque monsieur, a little bit with a little bit of truffle tremor in there because you don't want like a mass of it, but so you need something melty. But oh my gosh, this is good. Smells so good. This is nice.
How do you not eat it? Here's the question.
Just one moment. I'll be right back.
How long is truffle tremor aged?
Again,
That's
same
Mhm.
same concept. It's about 2 weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks at most.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, some other great uses for truffle tremor, just like putting it on a steak as it's coming off the grill and letting that melt onto it, making a compound butter. My favorite that I've ever tried was Mexican Coke and truffle tremor that's got a little bit of age on it. You get like the sweetness and the bubbles from the Coke, and then you get that earthy, salty, fatty flavors from the cheese, and it is really cool. I did not believe it, but I'm a believer now.
Love that. I have a bottle. I'm going to try it.
You gotta try it. I tell you.
That's going to happen. All right. So moving on to Midnight Moon, which is a very popular cheese of ours that is made for us in Holland. It is not made at Cypress Grove in Arcata because if we tried to make it there, first of all, we don't have the room to age it, and second of all, the soft ripened cultures just would not work, right? It would not work out. So Mary was at the Fancy Food Show one year, and a gentleman, and she was wanting to make a goat Gouda, but really knew that she couldn't make it happen in our facility. And a gentleman came up to her and said, "You have to try my mother's Gouda." Okay, great. And so she worked with this producer to come up with a proprietary recipe for us, and they make it for us in the Netherlands, and it's shipped here. It's aged 6 to 9 months. And it is the quintessential gateway cheese for people that don't like goat cheese. You can always give them this and they will be like blown away because it's just such a sweet, lovely, nutty cheese. It's so delicious. It is my favorite of our cheeses, but don't tell anybody I said that. And it is something that I use all day, everything for everything. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm kind of a popcorn addict. And so if I have a little bit of cheese left over, which doesn't happen very often, but when I do, I will take some Midnight Moon and can you see that? Put a little shredded Midnight Moon on my popcorn and stick it in the microwave for 20 seconds to get it a little melty. It is so good, just crazy. So good. So Nate, I'm sure I missed like 87% of what we were supposed to say about Midnight Moon.
No, you were very excited about Midnight Moon. I appreciate that. I think you nailed it. It did win the World Cheese Award Super Gold. I believe that was recently. But what I usually like to do with Gouda is find a nice Trappist ale to drink with it. And so and the Belgians and the one Dutch Trappist brewery put out some pretty good beers to pair with Gouda. So St. Bernardus Ap 12 is my personal favorite. And that's, I believe, a picture of it right there. And we have a great recipe on our website for broccoli fritters that are made with Midnight Moon. So I got to try those pretty soon.
That sounds good. You know, this is a really popular cheese, so much so that I remember years and years ago, Stephanie, you can remind me when maybe, but there was in your first tattoo story at Culture Magazine, there was a gal who, and shame on me for not remembering her name, who has the Bella de Ball, which is the name of the woman on the label, tattooed on her shoulder. And I think we can link to that.
Yep.
It's a great story.
Yep. We actually, Monica posted that quite early in the chat session, so you guys can go back and lovingly remember.
Awesome. I use Midnight Moon, as I said, on everything. I use it I go sweet, do a grilled cheese sandwich on cinnamon raisin bread, or go bold with like marinated tomatoes. And the thing I'm drinking with it most recently is Lost Coast Peanut Butter Chocolate Stout. Try and stop me.
Cool. We only have 4 minutes left. Should we just blast through Lamb Chopper and take a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Lamb Chopper, the only non-goat cheese in our catalog. I love this cheese. It's so simple and delicious. We launched it in 1998, and it has been a great complement to Midnight Moon as far as in cases where it's like you can have this really like robust, elegant cheese in Midnight Moon. And then you can have a sheep's milk cheese beside it. That's a little bit like, it's a step down. I love sheep's milk. It's so buttery and fatty and just like melts like a dream. So this is my go-to snacking cheese from our catalog. Drinking brown ales, black IPAs, Sauvignon Blanc, great pizza cheese, just a great melter in general. So
I used it to make cacio e pepe the other day with a little bit of, how do you say that, farokake stuff. Just drizzle a little bit of that on top. It makes an excellent cacio e pepe.
nice.
Delicious. And I made this little zucchini, fry up a little zucchini with almonds and shred it on there. So good. Oh, here we go. Good look. So good with a lot of cracked pepper. Delish.
And I am always looking for zucchini recipes for lots of reasons, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like goats. They just sort of keep coming.
Yeah. So we are getting super close to the end here. I want to just get to a couple quick questions. Here's looking at you kids. Oh.
Yeah. In business without you guys at the counters, making sure that people hear our stories and taste our cheeses. So we want to make sure, even if we get cut off, we say thank you for all that you do to make sure that we get into people's mouths and know our story. So thanks.
So someone was asking, since you're doing the ash and the whatever, the bloomy, have they ever considered doing a Valence?
We did at one point do one. It was called Pee-wee Pyramid, right? And it disintegrated in transit. So we weren't able to do it well, and we're not going to do it if we can't do it well.
Okay. And then I have a question too. I'm fascinated by this. So with all of since you were continuing to buy the milk during this horrible year, and yet you were making less cheese, did you get creative? Is that where Little Giant came from? Are there other cool things coming down the pike that you want to just tell us about or anything like that?
Did give us a chance. We donated a lot of cheese, all up and down the West Coast, up as far as Oregon and Washington and down into Southern California, because we didn't want that cheese, that milk to land in a landfill. And so that's one of the biggest things that we did. And yeah, you never know. We've got some stuff up our sleeves, but we're very excited about Little Giant too.
Awesome. Let's see if there's a couple other questions coming in. So you're getting lots of "we love yous," you know that. Why did you decide to do a sheep's milk cheese? Since you're obviously so well known for being a goat cheesemaker.
I think it just is it was a compliment to the goat's milk Gouda, and I believe one of the cheesemakers we were working with at the time was like, try this, and you're like, oh wow, this is really good. Well, we could actually use this, so finding a sheep's milk Gouda as they're starting to like become more noticeable in counters wasn't that common, I think, in the late 90s, but it's just a great compliment for that little segment of our catalog.
Yeah.
Basically, if Mary liked it, we'd give it a try.
She is a force of nature.
Yes, indeed.
She's nature. So we have hit the 5 o'clock mark, and I think we would all sit here and just chat, but we should probably cut it off. I can't wait to see you guys all at some point in time, hopefully sooner rather than later, as opposed to just on the computer. But you guys have been terrific, flooded with questions, and can't wait to see you.
Soon,
Likewise.
I hope. Soon, I hope. Yeah, thanks you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks so much for all the support of our cheeses over the years. Reach out to us, just sales at Cypress Grove Cheese, or to Nate, Nick, Michelle, whoever you got, Meredith, and we will answer any questions you might have lingering.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Culture, for having us.